Yantif. Today is Kislev. It's Rosh Hashanah LeChasidus, the New Year for Chasidus. It's the day, firstly, the Hilula, the day of passing of the Maggid of Mizrich in 1772. He's buried in Annapolis, as well as this is the day when the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Chasidus, the author of the Tanya, when he came out of prison in 1798. Interestingly, the Tanya was published just 2 years before that, in 1797. Now, why was he imprisoned?
You said 1798?
Sorry, 1796, thank you. Why was the Alter Rebbe imprisoned in the first place? They tell the joke about the person who told his mother he's getting involved with the Hasidic community, and he's going to have a farbrengen for Yutas Kislev. So what happened to Yutas Kislev? Said, well, it was free from prison. So, well, interesting. About 9 days ago or so, you told me that you went for something. Rebbe was also free from prison. And if I'm not mistaken, 6 months before that, there was a Rebbe who was, Talmud's time, was free from prison. I think you should check who you're hanging out with and what's really all about. But of course, the Alter Rebbe was in prison. It was a libel against him from those that were opposing the ways of Chassidus. And initially, there were many that were opposing. And what was construed was, being that he's giving money to the Jewish people living in Israel. Israel then was under the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turks, and which were at odds with Russia. They always were. And he was sending money to help them, help the Jews that lived there. Now, the numbers were inflated, and it was said that he's giving this money to help the enemy, which is treason. So he was arrested as on counts of counter-revolutionary activities, we'll call it, or it's not really the right term for that era, in the Tsarist era, but on treason. And it was to be arrested. Now, he was arrested and he was in prison for 53 days. 53 days is the same number as the amount of prakim, the amount of chapters in Tanya. And carries a lot of significance, because when the Alter Rebbe was in prison, he was visited by two special individuals who actually have already passed away. The Maggid of Mizrich, his Rebbe, and the Maggid's Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus. And he asked them, why am I here in prison? What's the significance? What's the deeper meaning? Why am I here? We know that nothing is by coincidence. Everything has purpose. So why am I here? And they told him the reason why you're here is because in Shamayim, in heaven, there is a kitrug, there's a heavenly decree, there's opposition to what you're doing in spreading Chassidus. You see, Chassidus is not new, but it wasn't available, it wasn't taught to general people. It was reserved for great Kabbalists. Very few righteous people had this information, they used it. But to come out and publish a book like he did 2 years ago, it changed the landscape of Jewish life. Again, nothing new, but it invigorated the way that we serve Hashem, with a tremendous focus on joy, with learning not just the revealed parts of Torah, but also an emphasis on the hidden parts of Torah, with putting effort into davening. It's a lot of kavanah, fervor, inspiration. There was many levels of increased involvement in Yiddishkeit with heart and soul compared to what was before. And in heaven they said, look, this is too much. We have to have free choice. We need people to mess up easily, so to speak. And these heavenly angels came and said, we don't want this information there. This belongs to angels. This is special stuff. And because you, not just it was being printed, it was being written and rewritten and passed around, but 2 years ago you published it. Now it's a book. It's getting all over the place. That's why you're here. So he asked them naturally, so when I get out, I should cease and desist. He said, no, absolutely not. On the contrary, because you had Mesiras Nefesh, you had self-sacrifice, you were committed at all costs to help the Jewish people by teaching these secrets of Torah, you've broken through the opposition. You've gotten through whatever kitrug was there. It's gone. And now you're able to teach and spread. And not only should you not stop, but you should increase. So the day of Yitas Kislev is not just Hilula of the Maggid of Mizrich, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe's teacher. It's not only the day that he was released from prison, it represents a breakthrough in the ways of Chassidus. It represents that in Shamayim, in heaven, it was allowed to give out, to share all of these teachings. And today you can get Chassidus in any language, you can even get it in Braille, if heaven forbid somebody needs. And there's Chassidus accessible online, especially on this channel. Subscribe and share. It's accessible, in every language. So it's a celebration and a day that's referred to as Rosh Hashanah LeChassidus, the year of Chassidus. It's a time that we farbreng. It's a time that we take on Achlatas Tevis, good resolutions. We recommit ourselves to learning, both in the real revealed parts of Torah, the hidden parts of Torah, to going in the ways of Chassidus, to have obviously so love for one another. And all of these elements are central to what Chassidus is and central to what it represents. The truth is, there was a different kitrog, there was a different decree against the teaching of Chassidus. And this was in the times of the Maggid, the Alter Rebbe's teacher. Chassidus was being taught to and written to a select group of individuals. It was slowly spreading out, but not in a book form, not in a manual form, not in a program of Tanya, for example. There was written manuscripts. There was a great tzaddik who saw a manuscript written of Chassidus, and he saw it like wandering on the floor in a disrespectful manner. And he said something to the tune of, how do you have such holy stuff? And this is what happens to it. You just write it down, you're making it available, and now it's in a disrespectful manner. And when a great tzaddik shares opposition or says something negative about it, it caused a stir in heaven. And they said, maybe this should be stopped. This is very deep secrets of the Torah. It's a treasure, and it should just be given out. The Alter Rebbe, who was preview to this heavenly decree, he said, I want to tell you a mashal. I want to give you a parable. There was once a king, and this king had an only son. The only son took ill, and they brought the best doctors in the region. They could not cure him. They tried various remedies, various medicines, nothing worked. Finally, they get a hold of this special expert doctor. He comes by, he looks, and he says, there's no hope. The only way, and there's a chance this may work, is if you'll take the Even Toiva, the precious stone that the king has in his crown, which really represented the royalness of the king. It was very rare. There was only one such thing. And he's going to be this diamond, this precious stone, you'll take it out of the king's crown. If you grind it up, put it into a liquid form, and try to get a little bit into your son, the prince's mouth, there's a chance he'll survive. So the king calls a meeting with his advisor. Should we do this? Should we not do this? And the advisor said, listen, not a good idea, because your uniqueness and really what sets you apart is that precious stone. Can't get rid of that. And a maybe that it'll help. It's not going to work. So he said no. Now the king, he disagreed, and he said, we're going to do this anyways, because this is my precious stone, but it's my prince, my only son. And even for the remote chance that it'll be better, I'm willing to give up, to destroy really this stone. And the Alter Rebbe continued, and he told the Chavraya Kadisha, the holy students, the disciples of the Maggid, he said, look, the Jewish people spiritually are ill. We need a dose of inspiration. We need help to be able to serve Hashem better, greater. We're very distanced from the time of the temple. If you look backwards, frontwards are very close. But behind us, it's been a long time since we had the temple. Levels of prophecy are not the way they used to be. Seeing miracles in everyday life, like the way it was in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, is not that available. So we need something. We need some extra push. Yes, some of it may end up on the floor. And yes, some of it may be used or misconstrued. But ultimately, a little bit will get into the mouth of the child. the Eibishter's only son. And we will be invigorated, we'll be healed, it'll help us, Hashem, it's all worth it. And when he said that, it removed the kitrug, it took away the opposition in the times of the Maggid to spread Chassidus. Now the Alter Rebbe took this to a much greater level himself, particularly with writing of the Tanya, and then allowing it to be published. And that was this other kitrug, and as I said, 53 days in jail, 1 day per chapter represents the 53 chapters of the first section of Tanya, which is Gan. 53 in Hebrew is Gan, which is a garden, and so on. One of the things that we do on Yitzhak Kislev is we start learning the Tanya again from the beginning. The Tanya has been divided in sections, daily sections. And if you do a little bit every day, you finish once a year. We finished yesterday. And today we begin again from the beginning, learning the Tanya. The Elimelech of Lizhensk, the great Talmud of the Maggid, was once traveling, and he was in a forest. And he sees in the forest there's a wood chopper, chopping wood. And around him, he has these bundles of twigs, or logs, more like twigs. But they're bundled together in such a tight fashion, where the top and the bottom are equal. Nothing is really sticking out. It's amazing. You just throw that in and it lights. It was perfect. And he asked him, how do you do this? This looks like they were created to be one bundle. I mean, I get it. You chop down a bunch of different woods. You brought them to put them together in a bundle. How did you get them to be so straight and unified and together? Like, what happened here? He said, I'll tell you. The difference between me and the other wood choppers, typical wood choppers, is that they chop wood. They want to make a bundle. But you can't, because one stick is bent, and one has a piece sticking out this way, and one has a different size. So what he does is he starts to chop off different pieces to make them unified. You put them together, but they don't really look perfect. I have a different method, he said. Let's say I have a stick that's sticking out a little bit. I find another stick that's inward a little bit, and I pair it together. It takes a little longer, but it fits like a glove. And now when I bundle them, they're really unified. They're really together. There's two ways where a person could have unity or getting along with one another. There's different approaches. One approach is you just say, we're doing it. We got to be together, right? There's differences, you push aside the differences. But the other way, and this is the way of Chassidus, as we'll see in a moment, it brings it together where each person is complementing the other person. What you're missing gets fixed by the other person. Their lack, they're almost receiving the part of you that's not the way it should be or whatever. How is this done? So this is really the foundation of Tanya, of Perek Lamed Beis, the heart of Tanya. But the Alter Rebbe speaks, and this is kind of self-understood to the extent that it was initially not even put into the Tanya. Because when you learn the whole Tanya, and you have an approach that the focus of a Yid is on spirituality, is on purpose, is on mission, and we recognize and value our neshama, our soul that we have, that leads us to have proper Avos Yisrael to get along with one another. Because you see, we have two neshamas. We have two souls. There's the godly soul and the animal soul. And the difference is, the animal soul is selfish. Okay? All it cares about is itself. Now, it could be nice to other people as well, because it feels that it gets a benefit from it. But its drive is pleasure. Its drive is what do I gain from it. And if you're in my way, or if some kind of moral behavior is in my way of achieving what I want, I put it aside. So for you, okay? Because money could bring pleasure. Be nice and honest. The way of his achieving his goal, then he's willing to cheat, steal, lie, whatever. Just as a rough example. The godly soul is the counter opposite. It's selfless. It has one focus. What does Hashem want? What's demanded of me now? What's my goal? What's my mission? What am I here for? And as a result, it's focused not on the physical side of things, not on the body of the person, but rather on what's something greater, something beyond ourselves. What are we really here for? Now, most differences between people are physical differences, which means the misunderstandings and the fact that you don't like a certain person, or you don't get along with them for whatever reason, all of these things are from the physical side of the person. But if you're able to focus on the spiritual side, able to make the neshama the central point, and the question is what's correct here, the question is what's needed here, the question is what does Hashem want here, then obviously soul almost becomes a natural. It's almost a given. Now, in the previous chapters leading up to Perek Lamed Beis, he speaks about the idea of joy. And he's speaking about joy in a sense that if a person is focused on his neshama, the way he's speaking in the prior many chapters, then what is it to be sad about? But there's a body which is causing other issues. A person has a problem, a person has something that's not going the way they need, and so on. But you could focus in and zero in on the spiritual side of it and the neshama part of it, and that brings the person to simcha. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but this is a very, very brief synopsis. The same applies when it comes to the way we interact with another one, with our fellow. When we look at another yid, and we could focus on the neshama part, we're all the same. It's on the contrary, it's helping one another. It's not a impediment to the other person. With this, I want to conclude and express my wishes to each and every one for Rishana Teva, Limud Chassidus, of Darach Chassidus, Tikasev Seichasim, which we written and inscribed for a good year in the ways, teachings of Chassidus, and going in the ways of Chassidus. Good Yantiv.
So.